All right, see a lot of people logging in here. We just went live, so as some of you are logging in for today's webinar on powering up your safety culture, just allow us a few more minutes here. We'll start out at the top of the hour, maybe a minute after, just to allow everyone to get settled in and finish logging in. Sometimes people need an attempt or two, so we want to get as many folks on here as we can before we get started. So those of you that are already logged on, appreciate you being here today. I look forward to talking to you guys for the next little bit of time here. Make sure that we end on time, if not a little bit beforehand, and save room towards the end for a couple questions. So again, just sit tight for a couple minutes, folks, if you would, and we're going to allow folks to continue to log on, and we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Looks like we got a few more people still jumping on, and we'll allow them to get on board here before we get started with the actual presentation. Hope everybody's doing good today. Make sure that, there's a couple items here I'll put up on the screen. Make sure that if you didn't catch them as I'm going through the presentation, when it comes to contact information or any additional information you need, by all means, just throw it in the chat box. We'll go over that here in a couple minutes as well, so we catch everybody's questions if we don't get to them during the presentation, or any additional information that you guys may be asking for. One more minute here, folks, and we'll get started. See the numbers still kicking up there, so more people are logging on. All right. We'll get going. I like to start on time as much as possible. And as I said, we'll make sure we end on time. Quick introduction here. My name is Tim O'Connor with OECS, OSHA Environmental Compliance Systems. I have been with the company for 6 years now, since I retired from the military after 24 years of service. I'm involved with industrial construction. I have some mining clients. I do some work on the environmental side, but one of the biggest things that I truly enjoy, I enjoy most of what I do almost all of the time, but I really enjoy working with people on cultural development. What do we need to do to take your safety programs, policies, procedures, and how can we move them to the next level to really culminate a behavior-based system and a culture where safety is not just a word. It's not just programs put on the shelf, but it really means something to each and every person that works for your company. That's what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about today. We will have some poll questions today, and when those poll questions, they'll pop up on your screen. You'll be able to answer. We'll take about a minute or so for each one. If you could really appreciate your involvement with any of the poll questions. Kind of help us understand what maybe the majority represents with some of the questions we're going to ask. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if you have any additional questions, comments, concerns, please put them into the chat. We do have a moderator on, Heather, and she's going to make sure that she may inject once in a while and say, hey, we have a question here, that, or she may, just ask us a thing or two here while we're going through the presentation. I'll have my information again at the end, as I just did on the previous slide, and we'll make this presentation available within a day or two after we're done here. So I want to start out with our mission statement: to inspire strong safety cultures. What does that mean? Well, it means a lot more than just writing programs, doing some trainings. We want to ensure that we're always moving towards being more proactive than reactive. That's not always easy to do in safety. Why? Well, there's all kinds of reasons why. Time. What is my return on investment in safety? I can't get all of my people together. And then sooner or later, the gaps become bigger and bigger with what we're doing and what we're looking at to keep all of our folks safe in our workplace. And unfortunately, way too many times, something ends up happening where now we're being reactive, where we could have been proactive. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a little bit. I want you guys to understand what we do, what OECS does. This is our wheelhouse, all things safety on many levels. But this safety culture, the basis for safety culture, I hope you get out of what I'm talking about today, is an important aspect of how you move to the next level when it comes to safety. We'll start out with our first poll question I just talked to you guys about, and I want to see if you guys can give some answers here, and would really appreciate it. Before we start, how would you rate your current safety culture on a scale of 1 to 4? 1 being the worst and 4 being the best. And if you would just go ahead and pick whichever one you feel you're at right now. Like I said, we'll take about a minute, let people chime in, and then we'll cut it off. And I want to see what the majority is, and then we'll revisit this question a little bit later. And I want you guys to really see how you feel when we go through some of the cultural based stuff that we're going to talk about here today, and see if maybe I'm missing a couple things here. So Heather, just let me know when we wrap this one up, and we'll put the results up there for everybody to see. All right, so everybody should be able to see those results. I got very, very minimal percentage of not very good, so that's good. Decent but needs work, which those two in the middle are the typical answers we get. And then we got the very strong. So we get 3% of you guys that are on right now saying, hey, I think we're doing a darn good job. And that's awesome. And then we can always talk about maintenance, right? Which isn't easy. So thank you guys for your participation. And like I said, we're going to revisit some of this poll question here, different aspects of it as we continue on. Changing a safety culture, if you feel that there's need for change, which oftentimes is the case after I give this webinar or seminar. I've done this with different groups, different levels, small groups, large groups, different versions of this. I've done this numerous times over the years, and I get this a lot. Changing a safety culture can feel like, and as you see on the screen, pushing a rock uphill. And I ask people, can you relate? And then they obviously say yes. So what do we need to do? How can we do this? How can we change this? This is the way it's been, the old school mentalities. And that's what we're here for. We're here to give you food for thought, to generate ideas, to talk about those, give you some stuff, although everybody can't speak today on the webinar, give you some things hopefully you'll jot down or get out of today's presentation that is going to get you to think, no, I can do this. I can change this, and this is how we're going to do it, or this is what we're going to talk about. This is our roadmap to how we're going to get there. And it doesn't happen right away, folks. Many times it doesn't happen, in the first couple months, couple years. It takes time to build, okay? So safety can be the catalyst to strengthening your company's culture, of course. And I ask a lot of people a lot of questions when it comes to What have you experienced in your workplace or even in your career, other workplaces over the years? I got a couple questions here that are going to lead into a bigger point. What's the most dangerous thing you've ever done? And if you like, you can enter them in the chat. Go ahead and put them in chat. And I like to read some of these after the presentation. It gives me a new perspective, or many times I see a lot of answers in a similar fashion that I've heard or seen before. And next is, what's the worst injury you've ever had in your workplace or another place you've worked over the years? And unfortunately, there's been some pretty catastrophic ones, including fatalities. And boy, you want to talk about a change in mindset, a change in how people look at things, view things, some of the ways that these worst case injuries, these fatalities have stuck with people over the years. So again, add some of the comments into the chat box if you would. I read a lot of different articles. There's a lot of evolution. There's a lot of fluid motion with behavioral-based safety, with strengthening safety culture. And it's becoming more and more prolific. There's a lot more information out there. But you have to take the information that really fits, is going to fit, and is going to work for you. Safe Start is a program. They provide practical training to help workers avoid injury, usually caused by human factors that are involved in the majority of incidents and injuries. So one of the guys who at Safe Start, Larry Wilson, those two questions that I just asked you to give some thought about, he asked this to thousands of different people, gathering the information. So most of the time, their worst injuries didn't come from the most dangerous things they'd ever done. Most of the worst injuries came from the things that they no longer really looked at as dangerous, that they had done many, many times. Well, how is that? Why is that? Complacency. Let's take, for example, a real OSHA case that I've looked at, and there's many out there that you guys can look at, where a machine worker was working on a cutter. Okay, it would cut sheets through paper, and this machine worker was an experienced worker, had been there for years and years, and there was a machine jam. And what should you do if there's a machine jam and now I have to get into the machine, I have to fix the jam, or I have to, do some type of maintenance to get it going again? Well, there was a physical barrier guard there. And the first thing that worker did was remove the physical barrier guard. That should be, the flag should go up right there. Ooh, if I'm removing a physical barrier guard and this thing is still under power, is there danger? Is there a hazard here? Of course there is. And what the worker did next was something that he'll never forget. He stuck his hand in there to unjam the machine, and the electric eye triggered the next round, figuring it was material, and boom, lopped off his fingers. Matter of seconds, okay? But when you look at it, and some of the questions asked in the accident investigation, do you think that worker knew that lockout should have been done? Of course. Do you think that worker did that same thing numerous times before over the years that they'd been working there? Of course. Complacency. I'm in a hurry. There's all kinds of reasons, all right? And this is where we have to talk about and really embed cultural-based safety to make sure that every single individual owns it to a certain extent. Because who's involved? Who's a part of safety? Everybody. We can't just write programs and put them on the shelf and talk about them and do our required training for compliance, because we all know and we've seen it over the years. It doesn't work to the best capability that us writing these roadmaps and these programs and doing some trainings, it doesn't work to really embed the why and the what for safety. We have to have a commitment to safety. Okay, I want you guys to come out of here thinking about your commitment to safety, and I'll talk about this a couple more times as we go through. For OECS, it's foundational, all right? And we talk about compliance. The culture, it should be part of your DNA, all right? Who are the champions of safety? Who really pushes that forward? And then we talk about costs, all right? Effectiveness, efficiency. But overall, what is your commitment to safety? So, we have a book. We've actually got to meet Mr. Anderson, and we have permissions from him, and we've got to utilize this book, Safety 24/7. I've been preaching it for quite some time because there's reasons why this book. There are many out there. But first and foremost, it's only 100 pages long. You can sit down and read this in a pretty short setting. It's in big font, which I like. It's a story format. It's not one way or this particular situation. It's written to be able to give you a look at specific jobs, specific things, specific hazards in your workplace and say, how can I implement this playbook and some of what's discussed in this book to make some changes that are going to improve my overall safety culture. So again, we're going to go through some of the chapters, and then I'm going to give you some of our OECS input advice based on what we've seen over the years. We've been, OECS has been doing this for, going on 29 years now. I mean, it's been a long time. We've been involved in safety here in Minnesota with numerous companies, and now, a lot of companies here in the Midwest. So we're going to talk about these chapters. As I said, I'm going to break them down for you. A couple we're going to kind of really get in a little bit more meatier portions in the beginning, and then the rest we're going to go through fairly quickly, not too quickly, but where you may want to say, hey, I have some more questions. I have some more, things I want to pull out if you went over some of these chapters. Again, you can always email me, put it in the chat. Think of some specific questions as you go that you'd like to ask me after via email, about the book. So again, put anything in the chat that you'd like to, that you think you want some more information on. So chapter 1, before we get into chapter 1, this is one of those meatier chapters. I have surveyor poll number 2 here. Do your employees know the company's commitment to safety or your roadmap to safety? For example, your programs, policies, procedures, hazard analysis for certain jobs, compliance aspects. And just rate this simply, A, B, or C. Yes, we train on these regularly, make sure all important aspects of safety are communicated from the top down. Issues can be brought up from the bottom up. B, they know we have safety policies and procedures. We do some training, some normal training, compliance training. C, we have policies, programs, we have what we need, but we don't really train that often. So in A, B, C, where do you think you guys are in your workplace? And then we kind of fit that in as we continue on, is where do we have room for improvement? And more importantly, how do we get there? What do we need to do to get there? So we'll give it, another 30 seconds or so here, see what our results are. I like tabulating these, real time too, to get everybody's feedback. And, a lot of times the averages end up being where we think they're going to be, but sometimes these, quite frankly, are really surprising based on who we have on the webinar. So Heather, if you want to wrap that one up here in a few seconds, and then we'll pop the results up. Okay, so not a huge surprise. I like the 24% at the top. Yes, we train regularly, make sure all important aspects are taken care of. A lot in the middle, which is typical. And then the 6%, again, hopefully some of you are really digging into some of this stuff or taking some notes because, if you have some policies, programs, you're kind of doing the compliance thing, but not really the subset parts, what is really important to every worker, how do we get there, how do we develop the culture, how do we make sure that at the end of the day we reach our common goal. And I'll pause and I'll ask you guys, what's a common goal for all employees, all workers at the end of their day or the end of their shift? And you guys naturally will probably be saying things like, well, to go home at the end of the day and to go home in the same condition that I started my day in, none the worse for wear. Okay, so continuing on here, again, I want to get a little bit meatier in some of these first couple chapters. What do we believe about safety? What are your beliefs about safety? Is it something that you practice only when someone is watching, or the safety guy comes out, or their lead or their manager or whoever it is? I better put those safety glasses on. Is everybody doing the right thing even when nobody's looking? I always like to ask people that question when I'm in big training groups, and a lot of times I'll get, sometimes I take little shortcuts. But we know that it only takes one time where you're taking that one shortcut. Go back to the example I gave with the shear earlier, and that experienced operator that ended up having an amputation, lost his fingers. What are some of your on-the-job behaviors or actions that demonstrate your belief about safety? Think about some of the things that really pertain to me. What am I doing to show that I do have a strong belief about safety? Or the other end of the spectrum, not really. I mean, I kind of do it because I have to. I do it because I'm told to. Which of your on-the-job behaviors do you believe are your strengths? And then on the other hand, what are some of your weaknesses? Are there any behaviors or actions you can eliminate to improve the overall safety culture? And if someone new started today, how would they rate your overall safety within the first week of employment? I ask this to many of my clients. I like to say, when you think about this new person coming on, how are you doing with their new hire orientation? What are you doing for a new hire orientation? Are you going through a lot of what they need to know right out of the gate when it comes to aspects of safety? Or should that emergency come up and somebody has to evacuate the building, or there's an injury, who do I talk to? There's gaps there with many folks I've talked to over the years where they don't have that set up right for that new person coming on board. We want to make sure we tighten that up. So right out of the gate, those people know what your culture is, what your beliefs are for safety, what you're doing for safety, and more importantly, what are you doing for them when it comes to safety so they do go home at the end of the day? How does Safety 24/7 define at-risk behaviors? We're going to talk about that a little bit more and some important points of this chaptered out section. And if you ever do get a chance to look at the book or read the book, it's laid out very well. I'm giving you just some points here that are going to fit within our time frame, but there's a lot more in that 100 pages that really digs into some of these, and there's great answers for you to think about how you could inject that into your workplace and maybe evolve your safety culture. What are some at-risk behaviors that people do? What is some of the risky behavior you've seen? How can you prevent some of the behaviors that result in potential issues, injuries, near hits, worst case scenario, catastrophic injuries, fatalities, and why would you perform any at-risk behavior? You ever looked at an employee that has come to you with an injury and you said, how in goodness sake did that happen? What were you thinking, or what were you doing? Or maybe you're thinking that in your head and you don't want to say that to the employee, but you think, how could that ever happen? And then you get into root cause analysis. We do an accident investigation and you see, boy, this person really doesn't get it. Or maybe we failed. Maybe we failed on the company side to ensure that person understood that is something you never do here. And that's happened many times too. I've been involved in a handful of accident investigations to include some fatalities. And I'll talk a little bit about that here. I have a story to share with everybody here in a couple minutes. When it comes to the statistics, and I'm not going to throw a lot of statistics at you guys today, but this one is very important. And every 5-year capture that we look at when it comes to statistics on actual injuries, incident versus accident, incidents usually being within someone's control, right? That something happened or something almost happened, a near hit, what used to be called near miss. But in the Safety 24/7 book, you'll see it's called a near hit. Why? Well, near hit sounds quite a bit more severe and real than a near miss. Near miss sounds like, yeah, nothing really happened. We're still safe. We're good. No, something could have happened. And then we get into that 3%. Yes, things do happen. But you look at this and you say, gosh, only 3% of the time though. So 97% of the time, Tim, you're telling me that there's something that if we look at, something else could have been changed to deter that outcome. Yes, 97% of the time. That's monumental. Well, so how do we get there? It's not that easy, but there are stones, there are blocks that we can build up while we're building this foundation and continue to build on it and make sure we're housing everything correctly. And that's what some of this talks about. That's what cultural-based, behavioral-based safety gets at. And that's what I really want you guys to understand is there's different levels of work here. And if you put in the work and then obviously the maintenance of it, you can really make and see the changes. So we get back to, okay, so what's my return on investment with safety? Well, it's quite a bit. When you look at an EMR differential of say, 1.4 to a 0.6 or a 0.7, we're talking tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. But more importantly, the cost to your employee, the direct costs to you, all the things that come with the domino effect of a person being injured, especially one that is severe, some that put folks out of work for the rest of their lifetime. So think safety first, right? Day in and day out, actions that put us or someone else at unnecessary risk or risky behavior is typically there in our workplace. Right. And some of you, maybe you're looking at the picture and you're chuckling as this guy's hanging his Think Safety First poster, and how he's getting up there to hang it probably isn't the safest way to do it. So what type of example is that setting when I'm telling everybody think safety first? Probably not a very good one. All right. So we have to make sure our actions, our words are based on what we do, what we believe in, and truth about safety. Not just the hogwash of saying, yes, safety is important. Bulletproof mentality. Many people have a sense of bulletproof mentality, not to say, nothing's hurt me yet, so why should I worry because I'm strong and I'm young? No, because people do become complacent. They have done things thousands of times and nothing's ever happened. But within those thousands of times, could something have happened because they are doing it the wrong way, because they're in a hurry? It's a shortcut. Yeah. Quite frankly, yes. And then that one time something does happen. Okay. Again, go back to the real world example that I gave you earlier on. Okay. Where the guy lost his fingers. Realistically, folks, if he's an experienced operator, he had been there for years, how many times do you think he took that physical barrier guard off of that shear and reached in for a material jam? I think I'd be pretty confident in saying that wasn't the first time. Okay. So we got to think about attitudes when it comes to behavior. All right. Have you or anyone you work with ever talked to anybody, or has anyone ever talked to you about the old school way? This is the old school way, kid. This is the way we've done it for years. Oh, we don't worry about that. I don't need that PPE. I don't need to do it this way. Okay. That's bulletproof mentality, risky behavior. Old school, new school, whatever school we want to talk about, the end state is this. We want the school of thought and the school that everyone's in your workplace to be in the same one that we're all on board with. Everybody remains safe, everybody remains healthy, and at the end of the day, everyone goes home without injury. And I think that most people will agree with that if that's how it's presented and that's how it's worked. So new ideas, old issues, we have them. Many of you have probably been in business, managed business, human resources, owned a business for many, many years, or you've been in business throughout some capacity for many years. So the person's attitude, we have to really take a look at it. And those folks with the old school mentality. Folks, it's hard. It's hard sometimes. I know it is. I deal with some of the challenging employees, even some employers today, why do we got to do all that? Why would we change this? Why would we change the way we're doing this? Well, because there's a better way. There's a more safe way. Oh, I don't know, Tim. I don't know. That's not the way we've been doing it. Okay, I'm not going to stand there and tell anybody they're absolutely wrong, but I sure as heck am going to give them my recommendation when there's a way to do it in a more valued, approachable, safe method versus continuing to put someone at risk. So to do away with the I can't do it that way. At least open your ears and open your mind to listen and look at new approaches. Well, sometimes they cost a lot of money. I get that. I completely understand that. And it doesn't always need to be gold star, right? The $150,000 fix. No, there's all kinds of other methods that we can look at. There's things that we can do on a lot cheaper basis. Maybe someday get to that gold star fix, but money is a big player in this, and I get it. So remember the question I asked you guys earlier, what is your commitment to safety? And as I've talked about some of this, now we still have, a little ways to go, but as I've talked about some of this, are you still thinking, or are you still pretty positive you are where you said you were with that poll number one? Level one being kind of the comply when it's convenient. Level two, comply when or because I have to. Yeah, we don't want OSHA coming in. We don't want citations. We don't want violations, all that stuff. I get it. Or am I crossing into those other thresholds where you want to be, a level three and a level four? And it's hard to get to a level three and a level four and then maintain it all the time. Why? Well, do you have new folks coming in? You got new people coming in, different attitude, different mindset, right? Yeah, we have all kinds of reasons and things that are going to play in. So if you do get to a level three, level four, eventually that's where you want to be. We have to continue to go around and evaluate attitude, behavior, action, results, performance. What is the mindset? What is our company's belief in safety? Is it a full-hearted core value, or is it something that we say and we do to a certain extent, but how can we do it a little bit better? So some food for thought. Look at the habits. What are examples of habits, bad habits that you have or you've seen in your workplace? Okay. I use this example a lot with my live training. I go back and I grew up in the days where seatbelts they sure as heck weren't mandatory. Okay. And I would ride in the back of my dad's pickup truck, going to the hockey rink or whatever, and me and my friends back. I remember in the back of the old station wagon, running around back there as a young kid. When seatbelts became mandatory, and if you didn't do it, now you're breaking the law, right? And you can get pulled over. Now you can get a ticket. How long did it take some of you to say, okay, now I'm going to start doing it? To the day.
Tim, we have lost your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there we go. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Heather. Sorry, folks. Apparently we lost the audio. Hopefully it wasn't lost for too long. Just had somebody fix it here. My apologies. So I was talking more about the food for thought, and I was getting into the seatbelt analogy. And Heather, I don't know, how long did I cut out there? Okay, not too long. So the seatbelt analogy, how many folks never wore a seatbelt before to where you are today? What's the first thing you do when you get in your vehicle? Well, typically you're going to put your seatbelt on before you take off to go anywhere. It's a mindset. It's an attitude. It's a behavior we're all used to because we don't want the ticket. We don't want to get pulled over. But now, is it really about that? Now, what is it? What is it more about when you put the seatbelt on? For most of us, I'm going to venture to say, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. It's because I know that if something does happen, especially now it's wintertime, I don't have control over all those other people on the road. I'm going to be more safe wearing my seatbelt. It's not that big of a deal. I'm absolutely used to it now. And it's the same thought process with what we think about in the workplace with some of this stuff, folks. Okay, let's control what we can control, and let's make sure we're keeping it as safe as possible for all of our workers. Okay, let's make it habitual. Let's ingrain it into our workforce. So where do we start? Well, we start with some of the foundational basis blocks that we have, right? We have programs, we have policies. Are we training on them? Who are the folks that are really involved? All right. Let's make sure we have some of those role models, those folks out front. And many times, everyone, that really needs to be people at the top. And very honestly, there's a good handful of times I don't see that at all. I don't see it. I don't see the people at the top ever coming to a safety meeting. I don't see them coming out in front of all their folks talking about the importance or the value of safety. I don't see them at all involved with safety other than saying, thanks, OECS, I'm glad you're handling all this stuff, and that's it. It doesn't work as well. It does not work as well, honestly, and I've seen it. If you want to change the culture in your workplace when it comes to safety, who's got to be out there with that bullhorn talking about? The folks at the very top. I'm not saying they got to get out there and do the training all the time. They have to be at every meeting. I know they have a lot of other things going on as well, but to have that face value and to make sure that all of your employees, your workers are hearing that same message from the folks that sign the check, boy, is that holds a lot of water. Holds a lot of water, folks. The first couple chapters, like I said, I got a little bit more in there. Some of these are going to go a little bit quicker, but there's a lot more information in all of these chapters. But time permitting, I want to make sure we at least touch on all of them. So one of the chapters in here, I read through this and then I reread it a couple times because I wanted to understand a little bit more. What's our nature when it comes to those one-on-ones with folks? Do we oftentimes recognize all the good stuff they're doing, give them the, hey, you're doing it right, like in the picture here? I'm not saying you need to pat people on the back all the time. Or do we more times than not let them know when they're doing something wrong? Usually it's the latter. We're pretty quick to let them know that they've made a mistake, they're doing something wrong, and we're not always accentuating the positives of what they are doing right. So again, take that into consideration and figure where can I take those opportunities to let people know? There's all kinds of examples, and that would get us off the rails. We could get into all types of other means of positive accentuation of safety through the safety committee or buying lunch. But again, make sure you are noticing when folks are doing something right. For real change to occur, behavior has to change, including the leaders. These sometimes are the toughest ones to get to change or to buy in to a safety culture, moving the needle attempt, and then getting to that next level, and then maintaining the next level, and then being one of the top companies that a person wants to come and work for many reasons, but safety being one of those reasons. They've heard that, gosh, they really care about their employees. And part of that care and part of that behavior is the fact that safety is ingrained here. All right. Every leader casts a shadow, it says, so beware of the fact that people will do what you do. Or they'll say, how important is it if I have never seen that leader at a safety committee meeting or involved with safety? A lot of importance to that. Human nature in a high-risk environment. Not always high risk as we think about it in our mindset of, could I die today going to work? But with some folks in their job, getting injured or fatalities are real. Statistically speaking, we go back and we look at the statistics. Still, 4,800 to 5,000 people die in the workplace every year in the United States. That's real. Hundreds of thousands of people are injured. Hundreds of thousands of people put in claims. We look at all this and we say, boy, if we can take out 97% of that, that's a big number. Big number if we go back to that 97% versus 3%. So I have another poll question for you guys. I want to get your quick answer on this. How fast do you normally drive on the interstate? This is kind of a fun one to go through. And are you, if the speed limit is 70, do you set that sucker at 69, 70? I'm a 5 mile an hour over person. I'm a 10 mile an hour over person. There's some people out there that take a little risk. They set that cruise at 20 miles an hour over. Where are you? Where do you set your cruise control if you're out on the interstate and the speed limit's 70 miles an hour? Give everybody a few more seconds to chime in. And I always like to see what the results are. This one here, usually get a couple people that, they're risk takers out there on the road. All right, Heather's going to bring the poll up here. We have nobody at 20 miles an hour over. Oh, thank goodness. I always get one or two, or sometimes even a few at the speed limit. 5 miles an hour over. Okay, we know we're probably not going to get pulled over for that. 10 miles an hour over, maybe a little bit riskier. Thank you, Heather. It's just some of the same things that we're looking at in the workplace. How much risk are some folks willing to take when it comes to typical job functions every single day, right? All of us have to get out on the road. All of us have to drive for the most part. But we have to look at the natural tolerance of risk for our employees. And we have to make sure we're identifying those where we've seen some people seem to have a little riskier behavior. I'm not saying they're doing things to push the envelope, so to speak, but going back to those shortcuts, going back to not wearing what they should be wearing for PPE because it's cumbersome, it's this or it's that, taking barrier guards off of equipment that's not locked out. Who is out there and who is risking a little bit when it comes to safety? So what is your risk tolerance? Something that, again, just food for thought for you to bring back. Think of an at-risk behavior you did on a task that you've recently done. I usually do this in a live group. Was it because of 1, 2, or 3? And these are some of those factors that often come into play. Did you do it because you were not aware? You weren't educated on the risk. You weren't trained. That's real. And who's at fault for that? Well, typically we are, right? Did you do the at-risk behavior because you had done it many times before and nothing has ever happened? And did you do it typically not as much, but that number 3, hey, it's a thrill ride type thing. That's usually not it, but 1 and 2 come into play often. And if those are coming into play, we have to look at some way to modify that risk tolerance and that behavior, that attitude, that mindset. All right. So again, managing safety starts by making sure that we are recognizing all the hazards and making sure we're asking some questions here with those hazards. Then we have to evaluate them. Then we have to make sure they're communicated and trained. And then we set the rule, we set the standard, we set the procedure, and then we got to go back and we got to make sure it's being done, right? We got to make sure that everything is doing how we laid it out to ensure we're keeping people as safe as possible. So the basis of this overall safety 24/7 conversation and what I just talked about a little bit there is start out with the basics. After you get through with the roadmap and with all of that, right? But then we have to look at specific job hazards and hazard analyses. What am I doing? What might be? Yes.
We lost your video.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. Give us just one moment.
Might need to just go with audio.
How is that, everybody?
Yep, we are good to go. Thank you, Tim. Sorry, everyone.
No, thanks for pointing it out. That's those glitches shouldn't be happening on our end. Okay, so again, what I was saying when it comes to the actual hazard analysis of the jobs that are taking place in our work environment, now we get into all those individuals. What am I doing? What is the do to reduce those hazards? Okay. That's something that's very important when we get into specific job hazard analysis for everything that we're going to be going through time again with all the hazards in the workplace. Feedback is key. As I said, the top-down approach is very important, all right? But then it has to be able to feed from the bottom all the way up again, okay? It's hard to accept feedback, but some specific feedback is very important, and some of the most important provided information comes from those folks that are on the floor or at the construction site or on the mine site, and they are doing those jobs day in and day out, 8 hours or more a day. They see everything every day. Sometimes they have magnificent ideas. And if we're not willing to listen or don't have a format for everyone to express those ideas and then bring them up for discussion, how are we going to improve? You're not at every job site every day, every aspect of those jobs. Heck, sometimes people don't even see what all of their folks are doing. And it's not, I'm not saying anyone's at fault for that. It's just, you're not seeing all of that. You're not there for that 8-hour shift. Be able to make sure that communication avenues are open and everyone is able to push that information up, okay? So 5 steps of a safety 24/7 conversation could go something like this, and there are variations to it, folks. But step 1, observe. Step 2, accentuate the positive. Step 3, explore. 4, emphasize. 5, agree on future actions, and now move forward. Now start to develop what that change is going to be, all right? Pretty soon it will become part of the embedded culture, part of the way that things are done on a daily basis, and that is the norm. Management buy-in, a very, very difficult one, as I mentioned earlier. Priorities change. Core values should remain constant. Is safety a core value at your company? Something that I'd like all of you to be able to take back and take out of here today and ask that question. Is safety a core value, or is it something that's just kind of shoved off to the side? If safety is only one of numerous priorities, yeah, we talk about it when it's important. Yeah, we talk about it when something happens. Folks, you're leaving gaps, you're leaving room for that thing to happen where now we have to be reactive versus staying proactive. What are your company's core values? Again, as I said, is safety embedded in there? Where do you address safety within those core values, and how are they addressed? And how would you explain this core value going back to a new hire today? Go back to that new hire orientation. Where and how are you taking the time to express how important safety is within your company's overall core value? When it comes to the support, the accountability, the follow-up, the elevation of people who serve that culture, the training, you as the individual, making sure you're key to an incident, accident-free environment. What is that acronym? If you look at it, safety, SAFETY, all right? What could the impact be if you utilize something along these lines or along this acronym and look at those points of the safety acronym to make sure that we're doing some of these? So how do I ask, or how do I go about this? Well, ask yourself some of these questions. What specific on the job behaviors do you see that support safety as a core value? What is the accountability? How are things followed up? What are you doing to elevate, and who's going to be involved in elevating that behavior-based safety and that culture overall? What are we looking at for training? How often is our training? Is training hitting the mark? Do you do a once a year shotgun training and it's 4 hours, 5 hours of safety training? And you know, by looking out at everybody that into minute 90 and they get their first break, they're already at the, over at the coffee table, whatever, and they're, oh my God, how much longer of this do we have? The approach has got to fit and it's got to work so that people are absorbing it. We're not just checking that proverbial box when it comes to safety training. We need to make sure the importance of it is there, it's consistent, and it's absorbed, it's hitting home. And then what's your involvement? You folks that are on here today, the key people in your environment when it comes to safety. Giving and receiving feedback, once again, is that two-way street. It's not just supervisors or leaders or managers that should give feedback all the time. If you're not allowing employee feedback, then you're missing the mark somewhere, all right? You're missing the mark. You don't want people to have to be afraid to bring something up when it comes to a potential idea or involvement or aspect of safety. You want to make sure they have a very clear, concise, open communication avenue to bring that to whomever can get it to the powers that be, so it's there for discussion, all right? And trust. Trust is essential in a culture of safety. Trust is important. Do you currently trust everyone in your workplace right now that they are doing everything that you've outlined in the realm of safety process, procedure, protocol, requirement? Do you trust that they're doing it? And if anywhere in there, the answer is not everybody, okay, we have room for improvement. We have a gap to fill. We got to figure out how to get there. All right. Maintaining momentum. This is where this can be one of the most challenging parts, folks, the maintenance of it. So again, getting back to what I said, you get into level 3, you get into level 4. Does it just stay that way? No, you have all kinds of injects that come in that change things up. Look at our current climate right now. All the potential changes, all the things that could happen with, maybe mandates, and again, and a whole nother track we'd go down on. So, but there's all types of things. It really, it's a strain with employees. It's a strain for employers. I get new people. It's hard to get new people right now. All of these things that we figure out, how do we continue to maintain? And if you don't do that, if you don't continue the journey and you don't stay on the rails and you let it drift too far off, you got to do a lot more work to get back to that level 3 and then level 4 again. So maintenance is a big part, right? Maintenance is a real big part. Sometimes we got to change. Sometimes we have to address them. I put this acronym up here, the WIFM acronym. Is there anybody know what WIFM stands for? WIIFM. It's the what's in it for me. You have to be realistic about telling folks why safety is important for them, not just for the company, not just to keep that EMR down, not because we don't want to pay more money. Yes, those are all real as well. But when you're talking to all your workers, all your folks, all your employees, you have to make sure that you're addressing what is in it for them. Okay. Like I said, keeping it real. All right. Safety is everyone's responsibility. Everyone. Everybody has to own it to some level of responsibility. To some extent independently, but overall as a team effort within the company, within their little team cell, whatever it is, one accident can be severe enough to change an entire culture. And I've heard and I've seen it happen. So real quick, short story here, and I know we're almost to the end. So very recently, and this is public information, I'm not using names or anything like that, but there was a trench collapse. The trench collapse, it happened in the span of about 3 minutes, where the person operating the excavator asked another worker on the job site to run back to the job site trailer and grab a level. The person went back to the trailer. By the time they came back, it was about 3 minutes. And the person that was operating the excavator was inside the trench for whatever reason. And the person that came back with that level found the operator dead inside of the trench. The trench collapsed. It was about 7 feet deep. And that person died. 3 minutes. And now it's changed the landscape of that entire company. The person that found the other individual that died, and have that image for the rest of their lives. So it is that serious sometimes. And we have to make sure that safety really is important for our company, to make sure we don't have all these other things, to not have the EMR high, to not have to deal with all the direct costs, indirect costs. Yes, but the most important aspect, the most important part is so everyone goes home at the end of the day. And nobody ever has to see anybody leave in the back of an ambulance or worse. The example that I just talked to you about. So identify your safety champions. Are you one of the safety champions? And all the things we talked about today is part of that map to make sure that everyone is going home at the end of the day. I apologize immensely for the couple of little glitches we had there. I hope you don't hold that against us too much, but as I said, we'll make sure we end on time. And I am. The last and final poll for today is just asking you to rate. And if you do rate, if you have any comments, please put them into chat so we get a better explanation of those. 3 stars being great. It was very helpful too. You got a few takeaways or one missed the mark. We'll leave this up for another 30 seconds or so. Again, your feedback is very important to us to make sure that we aren't just status quo, but we're always moving the ball forward and giving everybody a little bit more of what they want to hear and what they need to hear. So please, again, put your rating in there. And if you have any additional remarks, please put them into the chat section. And Heather, whenever you're ready to wrap that one up, we should be good to go. I appreciate everyone's attendance today. Thank you guys for taking the time. And visit our website at oecscomply.com for our upcoming 2022 webinar schedule and any additional information that you guys may need. Thanks again. If you have any questions, please, by all means, get a hold of me directly or get a hold of us here at the company, and we're more than happy to help you out with any questions that you may have had.
Tim, we do have a question here in the chat. So if anyone does have any other questions, please feel free to stick around and drop those in the chat for us. Tim's around for a little while. We did also have a comment, favorite webinar in a while. So thank you for that. The question is, as a leader, if I'm not a safety expert, what things can I do to lead by example?
That's a great question. No one's asking you to be an expert. And many times safety leaders, folks get the additional hat, right? Of I'm in HR, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And, oh, by the way, can you please make sure we're compliant with safety and make sure that everybody knows what compliance means here? Happens a lot. Happens a lot. Nobody, I don't think you could be expected without, going through a lot of additional time and effort to become more of a safety expert. I don't think that's really fair to ask of everyone, but where do I get the information? The biggest thing is, where can I find the answers? And then what do I need to do to impart those answers and then make it applicable to the workplace through training, through programs, through, whatever it is we're doing. So great question. I guess, one of my favorite answers is, because I truly do love what I do, is call me, call OECS. We'll be more than happy to help you put you on the right road to success. But look at the resources out there. Okay, we have MinOSHA. If you are in Minnesota, federal OSHA websites. There are consultants out there. There are folks out there that maybe even within your own workplace that hey, have you ever been involved in safety? Some of it is just asking some of the questions. Yeah, I've done this or I've done that. Gather that information, see who can help you out. But I don't think you'd be expected to give all the gold star answers or know everything, but at least know where to get it. Go to oecscomply.com. You go to the OSHA.gov website, the MinOSHA website. There's all kinds of other availability out there, whether it's through online courses and education, some in-person courses that are out there and getting going again. But great question. And if you can answer that a little bit more in detail, by all means, let me know. Any other questions out there, Heather?
I'm not seeing any others come through, just a lot of thank yous and great jobs.
Excellent. So folks, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and finish up here now. Again, thank you all for your participation. Have a great rest of the week and upcoming weekend. And again, if you need to get a hold of us for any questions, oecscomply.com or timo@oecscomply.com. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it very much.